Welcome back to Lady Tradie. Today we are doing another reupholstering project. I have a beautiful old leather club chair that I love and I don't want to get rid of, but the leather is wearing really thin and it's black, which doesn't really suit the style of my home that I currently live in. So I've got myself some beautiful fabric and we're going to give it a go. Like any project such as this, you want to start by giving it a really good clean, so give it a good vacuum, give it a wipe over, whatever you need to do to make sure that you're working with a clean piece of furniture. You need to have a number of things for this job, so go down to a fabric store and get some upholstering fabric that you enjoy, some scissors, a piece of chalk and a staple gun, and even a sewing machine can come in handy. I'm also going to be doing the cushion in a patterned fabric and the rest of the chair in a matching plain colour. So hopefully it works out really nicely. Now there's two ways that we could reupholster the cushion. If it is attached to the seat like this one, and you don't have access to a sewing machine, there's no point removing the cushion from the chair. I would just recommend tucking the fabric in around that and stapling it into place. However, I'm going to actually remove the cushion today, so where it's stapled down, I'm just going to use a screwdriver to pull that back up and remove that cushion and use a sewing machine to make a fitted new cover that goes around it. So the first thing I want to do is, using a piece of chalk, put the fabric over my cushion and draw onto the fabric with the chalk, so when I cut it, I'm cutting the correct shape. So if you are using a sewing machine, this is what I would do. So I have marked on here with chalk, it's kind of hard to see with this pattern, but I've marked the shape of the cushion on here, and then add an additional probably 2 to 3 centimeters. So that's allowance for not only the seam, but also because you need the width of the cushion to be covered as well. And then I'm going to double this because obviously I want it to fit snugly around that cushion. So I'm going to need 2 pieces. So when I cut this shape out now, I have 2 pieces that are identical, and I will sew along the seam allowance line, cut off the excess fabric, and that should slide over my cushion really well. Okay, so that's the trickiest part, trying to get the cushion in. And this is just my test run. So now I'm happy that it fits and it's nice and snug. I'm gonna go back around with the sewing machine and reinforce that seam by doing a second line of stitching, because we don't want to sit on it and burst a seam and have to pull our whole upholstered chair apart. So it's better to do it now. So I'm gonna go pull this cushion out again, go back around my seam. There's a little pocket here that's a bit loose, so I can tighten that up by getting in a little closer to my cushion. And then I will hand sew this part that is left open here. I mean, if you're really keen, you can go in and get a zipper and add a zipper, but I'm trying to keep it simple, so I'm going to hand sew this because if I ever reupholster it again, I'm going to choose a different fabric anyway, and I'll probably just cut this straight off. Now, because you're not going to see this stitching, it doesn't have to be beautiful. So I'm just going to pinch it together like that and run the stitch around. Just small sections at a time. The next step is to drape the fabric over the chair so that I can work out the correct size to cut it. So I'm wrapping it around the outside of the chair. Then I will mark it with chalk on the inside and then cut. So here I'm just marking the inside of that with the chalk line so that you can see clearly the length of fabric that is required. Once you've marked it with the chalk, lay it out flat so you can really get a good look at it. You'll notice that it is a fairly rectangular shape and it's even all the way around. That's what you're hoping to see. If you mark it with chalk and you don't see a uniform shape, then I suggest doing it again because something has gone wrong. When you're satisfied with that, again, allow for some seams, so the part that is going to sit flat on the chair and be stapled down. So I always add about 5 centimeters and then I cut. It's always safer to have more than what you need because you can always trim excess fabric later. Pop it back onto the chair and use just 1 or 2 staples to just tack it into place. You can pull these out later, but holding it into place using these staples stops it from slipping while you're trying to work with the fabric. The next thing that you want to do is, starting at the center of the back of the chair, arrange your folds. So do a little research if you like on different upholstery folds, but I usually go with a symmetrical fold, working my way out from the center, so evenly spacing each fold and tucking away excess fabric and stapling it into place as I go. Now, I really wanted to have a sort of luxe feel about this chair. That's why I've chosen this velvety fabric. So I really wanted it to look drapey, for lack of a better word. So take your time with the folds, experiment, get them in a position that you like and are happy with. Don't forget, even if you staple it, you can always just pop that staple out and have another go. Just try to make sure that you work from the center out. In that way, you are making sure that you have enough fabric on each side, but also that each side is evenly spaced. And once you're happy with the way it's folded, staple it down really firmly in place. So adding a lot more extra staples just to hold it down nice and tight. Now, once you're satisfied with the inside of the chair, flip it over and start stapling the bottom down firmly in place. So you can use plenty of staples here to do this. If you need to remove the feet of the chair, please do so. Unscrew them, staple it down, and then re-screw them back into place. Okay, so I'm reaching the final stage and I've measured and cut a panel for this bottom as well as for the sides here. Now, you can attack the sides or the arms of chairs in many different ways. If you want to sew, obviously you can make a pattern piece out of this whole backing and sew a front panel on, which then would fit really snugly onto there. So I have already done some sewing with the cushion. I want to also show you how you can do it with just staple gum. You would have noticed when doing the underside, there's tons of staples. So when furniture is made, they definitely don't go light on the stapling, and that's what's holding it all together. So you can do the same. So I'm going to do this bottom front panel now. And it's a little bit like sewing. So I'm going to have wrong side facing in, and there is the existing seam here in the leather. I'm going to overlap that a little. So when I staple it, or I guess I'll staple right on that seam, it'll fold back over and you won't even see it. So you want to have enough hanging over the bottom to wrap underneath and enough to wrap over the top as well. So that's the position that I'm looking for. And I always just tack it with a staple to start with. So one at the top, one at the bottom. Remembering you want to be stapling into something hard underneath. So if you're just stapling it into soft, cushiony foam, that's just going to come straight out. So if that happens, do it again. And aim for timber, which is usually closer to those edges. There we go. So I'm going to add more staples along that seam, but you can see the finished product there. When I fold it back over, you don't actually see the staples. So that's the goal. There you go. Nice. Okay, and then I can do the top. Don't forget there'll be a cushion on this, so none of this raw edging is going to be seen, just as it wasn't on the original cover with leather. They've just stapled that straight onto the timber as well. So we're just doing the same thing here. Now I haven't kept my lines very straight there, as you can see, but that's no problem. I'll just pull out that staple and do it again. Okay, so I'm just gonna tack it to make life a little bit easier. And then I will remove this staple, straighten it up, and do that again. And this is, I guess, the joy in using a staple gun. It's a lot easier to just redo things if you're not 100% happy with them. That's better. Okay, so that's a smoother line now. Now, how do I do this other side when I'm not able to fold it back in? Well, it's a bit tricky. We're still going to fold it in. We'll just do 2 or 3 up here to reinforce it. And then we'll do that underneath. So I always start at the outside and work my way in. That way, if there's a bit of stretch in the fabric, you're evening it across the entire surface and not just getting to one end and having all of this bunched up fabric due to stretch. So I usually go tack the ends, tack the middle, and then work my way back in and along. Okay, the only part left to do is the facing of my arms, and I'm going to do that in the same way. The last panel on any project is always the hardest because you don't have anywhere to hide the staples or the stitching or whatever you're using. So some people might do this with a hot glue gun. I'm not a big fan of that because I feel like hot glue over time dries out and then it starts to peel off. Another thing that you could do is you can buy like upholstering decorative strips that go along here, so I could glue or staple and then just put a decorative strip around to hide that, but I don't really like those either. So what I'm actually going to do is a combination of staple gun and hand sewing. You may or may not be into that. If you're not into it, then go with the hot glue. If you are, then watch and see what to do. It takes a bit longer obviously, but I find that it lasts longer as well. So like always, I just want to get a piece of fabric that is the right size. I always do way more seam than necessary because you can always trim that off afterwards or tuck that under and hide it. So as long as you've purchased enough fabric, then you should be fine with that. I mean, if you're really pedantic about those pieces, use a measuring tape and measure it all out, but for me, I don't have time for that and I don't enjoy doing it that way, so I just use, I guess, my experience and give it a go. And I always make sure that I buy more than enough fabric so that that's not an issue. Okay, we've got plenty left over if I stuff it up and want to go again, but I have enough here for 2 arms. So let's get started. So I will be stapling the outside, folding that, so wrong side's facing, so then I can fold it out and have the correct side facing out. So I'm going to staple along here, fold it around and then sew the other side. Tuck the fabric in to make it rounded at the top of the arm, and then do exactly the same process for the other side of the chair. And there you go, I have a brand new beautiful luxe chair to add to my living room, and I just love it. So good luck with your projects. Write in the comments how yours turned out as well. I'd love to see how you all went.